The webcast today is going to be on Data Wizard. This is one of the new and most powerful tools in our CIM Project Suite. These are Civil 3D plugins, and Data Wizard is focused on custom legend creation and QTO. So a very robust tool. Excited to show you guys today. We'll spend probably the full hour walking you through some of this stuff, but we will also have additional webcasts on different use cases. So this is probably one of the largest tool sets in the CIM Project Suite and the most universal in terms of what types of users, what types of projects, what disciplines might use this. I anticipate everyone using this tool. So with that, we'll get started. My name is Brian Lewandowski. I'm the Civil Product Manager at CTC Software here, and I'll be doing the presentation today. So the CIM Project Suite, many of you guys have this, and you're just tuning in to see what some of our new tools are. But if you don't have it, it's a suite of tools that run on Civil 3D, and they're productivity tools, so they're for end users. And our main task here, I don't have to tell you guys, Civil 3D doesn't do everything right. It's a nice piece of software, but we want to take some of those tedious tasks, automate those, and we want to do it across the whole platform. So we've got tools in here for corridors, pipe networks, legends, sheet creation, survey users, all kinds of things. And for users really at all different levels. You don't need to be an advanced user, nor does it only apply to beginners. What we're focusing today is on the Data Wizard tool set. That's right in the middle there, within the red box. Some of these tools I'm showing today, Data Wizard specifically, these came out just a few months back, so those of you who haven't updated your CIM Project Suite, be sure to do that. We release things on at least a quarterly cycle, often sooner than that even. So before we jump into what Data Wizard does, I want to set up a little bit why we did this. And I want to do that by talking about, just briefly, some of the native tools that are in Civil 3D. We'll take a quick peek at those, understand why they're not quite serving us, and what we're solving with Data Wizard. So the native Civil 3D table or legend or QTO tools, a number of shortcomings. One, there's no real legend creator in there, right? There's nothing that'll like put together line work and symbology and put it out in a table. And so that's a huge piece that's missing there. So what we're stuck doing, because nothing will tabulate these graphics, is we have to have these kind of standard one-size-fits-all legends that we drop into our sheets, and then we either manipulate them manually, or we just kind of let them be what they will, and we're either showing things that we don't want to show that may not be part of that project, or worse, the reverse, we don't have something in there because our legends are out of date, and there's something new in our sheet. And we didn't show it in our legends. So it's an accuracy issue too. We're not just trying to speed up legend creation. Of those native tools in Civil 3D, to me, there's just too many different tools. None of them really quite do it all, right? There's one for this type of table, that type of table, quantity takeoff here, and it's all these different things. And we're trying to build a tool that will do basically any kind of data extraction you might want to do across AutoCAD and Civil 3D objects and tabulate that or put it in a legend or do a quantity takeoff. We want it all in one place. The Civil 3D tables, those of you guys who have used them, they're great. They're dynamic, right? They scan what's in the drawing, but the formatting is really, really limited. A lot of manhole schedules people are trying to generate. You can't quite do it with the Civil 3D tables because the formatting needs to be fairly detailed. Oftentimes these tools in Civil 3D are limited to only working in paper space or model space. Not with Data Wizard. We can build tables or legends anywhere. And the QTO Manager, a pretty infrequently used tools, and it's because it has just a lot of limitations to it. So Data Wizard is looking to address all of these things here, and I think we've done a really good job at it out of the gate. That being said, we're adding things to it on almost a weekly basis here, so it really is going to be a cool tool. So Data Wizard, A number of things. The first idea came here from drawing specific legend requirements, right? I want to be able to scan for a sheet or a drawing or multiple drawings and build a new and most powerful tools in our. We can do detailed quantity takeoffs. It doesn't have to generate a table in the sheet. I can send it out to Excel. Count up all my my curb line, or count up all my seating, whatever it is. We can do that across all kinds of AutoCAD and Civil 3D objects. I'll show you the list of all the objects we can scan for, but it's, most of our sheets make up things that include Civil 3D objects, could be survey points, and AutoCAD objects like hatching or just a simple polyline. We need to be able to read data from that, even if it's just counting them or quantifying the areas or lengths and so forth. So it's all the point, line, and area type objects within Civil 3D that we can scan and generate legends and quantity takeoffs from. That's what Data Wizard does. You can save templates out of Data Wizard for quick reuse. So this might be, you define how an existing conditions sheet legend would look. You can save all those settings and then distribute it to end users, and they can just load this and generate tables in a matter of seconds. So to me, some of the key benefits with Data Wizard, it's quantity takeoffs are legends that are specific to what's in the drawing. And this is the big piece of it here, right? I spent all this time generating and creating objects and drawing things and drafting and modeling. The quantification or the annotation of that stuff, I want it to be quick. I don't want to spend time on that. That's busy work. We don't have to have one-size-fits-all legends anymore. This isn't just about speed, it's about accuracy. I can't tell you how many times I've seen plans or heard from folks who have plans that go out with legends that are inaccurate. Right? We need to scan for what's in the drawing, not have a one-size-fits-all legend. And like I said, no more mistakes. Manually editing those legends, is this in the sheet? Is it not? A pretty error-prone process. And what we're going for is all your tabulation, all your quantity, a number of things, those requirements, they all come from one tool. So the tools that are part of Data Wizard, there's 3 tools within the ribbon. There's the Setup Legend command, and that is a wizard that comes with full controls. And then there's the Create from Template. So after you've run through that wizard, you can save out all those settings to a template, and you can simply load that. I'll show you how that tool works. And then the Update Legend, if something changes in your drawing and you need to refresh that table, you can run that and it'll rebuild that table for you. So these are dynamic tables. So with that, we're going to jump into Civil 3D and take a look at how Data Wizard works. So there's a lot of use cases for Data Wizard. I'm not going to be able to show them all to you here. That being said, I've got webcasts in the future where we're going to cover all these different use cases, including some of the nitty-gritty back end of how Data Wizard thinks, so to speak. So I've got a drawing here where I have some existing conditions here. I've got survey points, I've got survey figures, I've got some hatching in here, and I've got a couple sheets that I need to generate legends for. Now in this case, I want a legend on each sheet here. Now it could be one master legend that resides on the 3rd sheet, all different kinds of scenarios here. We can pull data from all different sources. This case here, I want to generate a sheet or a legend for just what's on this sheet and just what's visible in this viewport. So if I go up here to the CIM Project Suite tab, here's my Data Wizard, and I'm going to start by launching this command. So Data Wizard, the primary tool, the Setup Legend command, is a wizard. It's a 4-page wizard, and I'll walk you through it here in detail so we understand how this works. So right at the top here, I've got my current drawing, XREFs, layout options, and or include additional drawings. This entire page is about defining my drawing sources As simple as that. What drawings am I scanning for? Okay, if I had XREFs, those would load right here. If I wanted to limit to a layout, in this case we do. I said I wanted to build a legend for just this sheet. So I'm going to turn this on and say limit to site plan 1. We got an option here to include partially visible objects. I'm going to stick with that. And say I had multiple viewports here. Maybe I had a kind of a zoom in area. If that's the case, I want to be able to choose which viewport. So I'd go like this and say specifically this viewport is what I want to scan for. I could check on include additional drawings. Perhaps I'm scanning across multiple existing base drawings, and those aren't necessarily XREF'd in here, but I want to scan for what's in those drawings. I could do that and then simply browse out and add multiple drawings to this one legend that I'm going to create. So lots of different scenarios. At the bottom here, you notice the Save Template command. That's what I was talking about, where I can save out the settings I've defined in this wizard at any point. That button will always be there. We can save it out. And of course, at the top, you noticed the template. I could load right here a Data Wizard template file, and I'll do that a little later. But this template option, perhaps you had one ready and it's got 50% of your settings. You could load it here and then go through this wizard and continue to change things. All right, so moving on. What does this thing do? This next page is about the objects I want to scan for and put in my legend or include in my quantity takeoff. And if we look at the list here, I've got 3D polylines, alignments, blocks, okay, all the core objects that I might want to scan for and put in my legend, put in my quantity takeoff. And check them all off or on. Okay, now what's in this drawing? I've got survey points, I happen to know this, survey figures, and I've got some hatching right down here. I can see that there. You can check other things on if you're not sure what's in the drawing. You simply click the refresh button down here, and it tells you what's in this drawing. Well, there's no lines at all in here, so I can check that off. This is simply survey points, figures, and hatches. Okay. Now there's a filter option here, and I'm going to discuss that in a bit here. And I think I remembered some of my settings from the last time, so I'm just going to clear these out so we can discuss that in more detail. So these two columns here, total items, that's everything found in the drawing, and then filtered items is what's based on those filters. And to understand what these filters are, we're going to go to the next page in the wizard, which gives us more detail on what it found in my drawing. So if I expand the survey points section, it shows me the objects it's found. And depending on the object type, for survey points, it displays the raw description. Okay. And right off the bat here, we can see, let's go ahead and sort that by the object column there. We can see it's pulling all kinds of points into my query. Back of curve shots, okay, all kinds of things. I don't necessarily want these things in a legend. That's where the filtering comes into play. And how we do this, there's a lot of different ways to do this. The example I'm going to show you here is a pretty simple one. I'm going to close out of this for a minute. We'll jump back in. I've got my drawing set up, and you guys might have something similar as well. Depends on the type of drawing, such that symbology lands on layers with SYMB in it, okay? And then non-plotting points, I've got node layers. Okay, for line work, I've got V figure lines. This is for like center lines and break lines. This is line work I don't plot. And then line work I do plot, I have on line type layers. Now, whatever layering standard you have, no problem. We can just use that text within there to create a filter based on layering. The reason I do this in here is because I can do simple tasks like freezing all the figure layers so I don't see that in my sheet. Freeze all the node layers so I don't see curb shots and ground shots. I instead just want the curb lines. Okay. So your standards play into how Data Wizard works, right? If we need to be able to filter through the objects in our drawing, we have to have data associated with those objects that makes sense in ways for us. So your data starts to become more important. That attribute data associated with a particular object, the layer it's on, the layer description, the style, that stuff starts to become more important now, and we can use it to our advantage. So what I'm going to do is go back in the Data Wizard. We'll keep these same settings here. And then for survey points, remember we got all those shots there? I want to come in here and just simply say include layers that have S, Y, and B in them. And right away that filters down the number of points it's picking up down to 51. Now I want to do the same thing for survey figures. That happens to be layers with the term line in them. Notice I'm using asterisks here. Okay, so this thing is going to find any layer with the 4 letters L, I, and E in that layer name, anywhere within. Okay, so that same kind of syntax you might use in File Explorer searching, that you might use in your layer searching over here, all of that works in here. And you can see all kinds of different properties. So I'm using layer name to filter, but we could use layer description. We could be filtering by the point raw description, object naming, object styles, okay, if there's hatch patterns, what site it's in, okay, all kinds of different options here. And some of them gray out, you know, we're dealing with survey figures here, so point groups don't apply. But I could certainly filter my points by a point group. So let's hit next and take a look at what is showing up now for my survey points. This is starting to look a lot more reasonable. I've got trees showing up. I've got a catch basin. I've got a sign. Okay, not a lot of symbology going on here. Let's take a look at the survey figures. Just those few survey figure types showing up here. One question I do want to address that was asked, can I also pick the layout or the viewport? So back on this screen here, where I said limit to a layout and a viewport, can I also pick the layout or the viewport in the added drawings? Meaning if I add additional drawings down here, can I then limit those to a layout? Right now, the limit to layout option is just with the current drawing. But I'll make a note of that, and if that's something that's is feasible, we'll certainly get that feature added in. So thanks for the question. Good question. So moving on, we're back here. The survey figures, the hatches, we see those come in. Now what about this information that's showing up here? Okay, we've got our objects filtered down, we think. But what about this information? Okay, right up here, there's a data to extract option. What information do you want out of your objects? You name it, we've got it here. The graphic itself, that's the symbol. Okay, that comes into play in a legend. Then we got layer names, descriptions. I happen to think layer descriptions and perhaps style descriptions are really handy places. Let's turn on some of these. So a style description, let's look at the survey points. Here's the style description. Okay, I've got some of that data in there already. However you want to do it, configure your standards around this appropriately. You probably have a lot of this data in place already, but you haven't taken advantage of it. It's just kind of something that was there to help you organize while you were building layers or styles. Now it starts to matter when we're doing smarter scans of the objects in our drawing. There's other information here too. We're going to stick with layer description. For quantity takeoff purposes, there's that 2D length. I can count things up. I can get 3D length. I can get area depending on the object type. Now let's look at a couple of these other ones. Additional data and custom description. So I'll hit OK to this. What is additional data? Let's click into this right here. What kind of data is associated with objects? Well, it depends on the object type. If it's blocks, I might have attributes. I could pull that information out of there. If it's survey points or survey figures or parcels, I could pull user-defined properties out of there. Any kind of AutoCAD object can have GIS object data associated with it. I can pull that information out. And then recently added to Civil 3D in the last couple versions is a concept of property set data. We can assign this to all sorts of Civil 3D and AutoCAD objects. Okay. One of the great things about property set data is it's just that we can get all this attribute data attached to our objects. But what Civil 3D didn't give us was the ability to extract that information in helpful ways to build tables or quantity takeoffs or what have you. So that's what additional data is about. I'll show use cases of this in some future webcasts, but I'm going to stick with this one use case here. The custom description, that's just simply that. I can type in, right? Say my standards aren't quite configured yet. I can type in whatever it is that this object is. Okay. Really what you want to do though is be reading the object, the attribute data from those objects themselves. So let's trim this down a little bit. We said we're going to use a layer description and the graphic itself. Okay, we're building a legend. All we want is the symbol there, and then next to it, a simple description of what that represents. Okay, so this is kind of a raw view of what your table will be. The object itself, that's just so you know what it's scanning for. And then we're going to have the graphic column in our legend and the layer description. Okay. Now something else you might be noticing is deciduous tree. This is showing up multiple times, and it's because we've got diameters on here. It's a handy thing. We can use Civil 3D to scale the symbols to different sizes based on the tree diameter the surveyor typed in there. But when it comes to a legend, I don't need to show a deciduous symbol, right, multiple times. But how is Data Wizard going to know that? It's not, because they all have different descriptions here. Well, we can get a little smarter with our filtering. What do these have in common? Well, they all start with TRD. So I can go in and say, you know, everything that starts with TRD, just count that as one object. Don't put in a row for every size of deciduous tree, just the one. So let's go back here to the filter. And what we're talking about on these survey points is the raw description. And you might have noticed there's a weed duplicates column here. If I type in TRD with an asterisk, that says everything that starts with TRD, weed it down to just one object, right? This is legend creation here. So that's how this works. Okay? This stuff is described in real detail in the user guide, but I want to touch on it briefly here because it's one of the real powerful features, and we actually didn't have it on the initial release of this, and we realized we were missing something, and so that was added shortly after in the next release. And you can put this stuff in here, right? Maybe the coniferous trees, let's put that in there. Catch basins, okay? Now remember, all this information I type out here, it all saves to the template. So as you generate these legends for one project after another, these kinds of filters, they're going to be the same for each legend. And if they're not, you simply dive into here and tweak them a little bit. So when I hit OK to this, you're going to see this filtered items drop from 51 down to 7. If I now hit next, we look under survey points, we're going to see just one deciduous tree, one sign, and one storm inlet. Survey figures, right? So not a lot going on in this particular sheet and viewport. It's fairly simple. Let's hit next, go onto the fourth screen here. This one is all about formatting the data. How does it look? Okay. So starting right at the top here, there's data sorting. If I click on this, it's right off the bat here, there's sort object groups. If I click on this, it's going to sort the groups right here alphabetically. So if I hit OK, we should see hatches jump to the top. so on and so forth. Well, maybe I don't like that. Well, I can say, put my symbology, my survey points at the top, and then put my line work, and then hatches come last. And then in that data sorting, I just make sure that's off when I'm in there. Okay. Now all we're showing is layer description. So how I sort the data within the survey points group, object, graphic, or the layer description. I'm going to stick with layer description. I want to sort alphabetically by the layer description column. And I was defaulting to that anyway. Okay, so data sorting, that's in there. You can control these columns, the order of everything down here. This is like your table formatting window. Capitalization, I can force title case, uppercase, sentence case, all different kinds of things on the data within there. And then a lot of this starts to have to do with your standards. So the graphic cell size, what's the minimum width? What's the minimum height of it? Okay. So the graphics themselves, we're going to get a little sample of hatches. We're going to get a little sample of line work. Okay. What I'm going to do is create the legend so we get a visual, and then we can kind of come back and play with these numbers a little bit so you see how they work. And then what do I want to include? I don't want object types, meaning I don't want it to say survey points or headers, but I do want it to say legend right at the top. So we've got a custom legend field you can type in there. And then depending on how nicely my blocks and line work is created in here, I can apply different scale factors. So moving down to the bottom here, this is where I'm going to write this data to. And I've got two options. I've got Excel, or I've got an AutoCAD table. So that's what we're creating with Data Wizard. When we tabulate this stuff right in the drawing, it's a native AutoCAD table. And it's going to insert symbology right in it. And it's going to write all this text to that table. So we're not creating anything proprietary here. These are native objects that can be read with any installation of Civil 3D. But we're automating the creation of these tables. So you can do both at once. In this case, we're building a legend. So I'm going to leave that as that. And then here are my AutoCAD table styles. Now I mentioned we can do this in model space or paper space. And of course your table style dictates the size of that text, the spacing on the cells in that table style, and so forth. So let's hit finish to this. See if I missed any settings. And we'll drop this right here. And there's a legend it created for us. Okay, looks like we did everything right. We zoom in a bit here. We can see a tree symbol showing up, a sign, a storm inlet, building face, curb, edge of concrete, and then these hatch samples as well. This information reads from the layer description. And just to kind of prove it to you, say we don't want it to say signs, we want it to say sign. We're really particular, right? Well, here's those layer descriptions. Let's just take the S off of that. If I were to do that, or any other change in my drawing, we'll do a couple of those, but let's just do this one right now. I made a change. I simply run update legend, and what does it do? It scans the drawing for all those settings that I specified in this table, and it actually saves that stuff to the table. So it says, what's the template? Read from the table. In the AutoCAD table, it's the one I just selected. So I simply hit OK, and it's going to run an update, and it's going to read that drawing again. And of course, now the S drops off. Okay, anything else you change? You change the style, the color of the layer, all that stuff, it'll push to this. Now, what if there's a setting within Data Wizard that I wanted to change? Perhaps the hatch sample was too big and the line length, I don't quite need all that, right? Just delete your table and run setup legend again. If you have a template, just load it. Otherwise, it's going to remember exactly your settings from the previous execution. So I'll hit next, scroll right through this stuff, and I said My graphic cell size, we got a minimum width of 3. Let's say, no, that was a little too big. I didn't need that. Hit finish. Now we've got a smaller sample. We do a little comparison here. What about these symbols? We want these to be the exact right size. There's those signs, they're the exact same size. The catch basins. And of course the trees, we've got a description key scale factor happening there. So what it's going to do is going to take the standard size found in the point style and apply that right here. And you can simply play with the value. I'll just mention it because it's worth noting in your point style right here, and that will affect the size of the symbol right here. Let's run that one more time. Set up legend. And there was one setting I think I missed here, and I didn't mention this stuff, but I want to go in and turn that on this time, which is the exclude layers. And I want to exclude frozen layers. Now I don't think we had any problem with it, but I want to show you kind of how this works. So let's exclude frozen layers. We'll hit next and just finish this. And now let's go ahead and freeze a layer. Now that that setting is in my legend, I missed it on the first execution. Let's go into here and let's do a layer freeze. And notice I'm freezing within the viewport, so this is going to be a viewport specific freeze, and perhaps I don't need to show building hatching, right? Whatever it is for your standard, how you show your legends or what you don't show, we can control that here. And the other thing is perhaps there was more data, maybe some more survey data that came in that needs to show up. Let's go over to our survey database here and bring in some more, another survey event. So insert this into the drawing. And what this was some hydrants. Okay. So whatever you're adding or subtracting, right? So these are showing up over here now. This is common, right? We can always, we've got two choices. I can run setup legend again, but perhaps I ran it for something else, so the recent settings aren't necessarily going to apply. Or I just run update legends, and the setting within this table, those settings will apply. So I pick it. Now what we should see is the hatching for building go away, and we should see the hydrants show up as a symbol in here. So I hit OK. Wait for it to refresh that table. And there it is. The hydrants show up. The building hatching disappears. Okay. So these are smart tables we're creating. They're not dynamically linked, right? If we were to do that, we would have ended up creating a proprietary object. And we don't want an object that, you can only understand in Civil 3D if you have the Civil 3D tools from CTC loaded. We want to create just standard native objects. We just want to automate it for you. Let's jump to Site Plan 2. Here we have a different sheet, and we have some different objects. We've got some storm manholes there. Looks like we've got other tree types in here. No signage here. Okay, so we want to create a legend for this sheet. Simply go to Site Plan 2, remove that previous viewport reference, and pick this one. Hit Next. And now all my filtering settings will apply. Let's take a look at what shows up, what objects come through. Looks like I missed one. I need a filter for storm drain manhole because it's pulling 3 of them because I have additional data in that raw description. Not a big deal. I simply add, show up the building hatching to storm drain manhole with an asterisk. Now you can do all sorts. These are smart tables we're creating. They're not dynamically linked. special characters can be in there, whatever it is, you can filter or weed out duplicates in a lot of different ways. So I hit next again, take a look at my survey points, looks like that's coming through. Survey figures, get some storm drain pipe in this case. Then hatches, nothing showing up because there's nothing in the viewport. The next screen here, again, it's remembering my previous settings. At this point, let's also save out the template. We'll overwrite our old one here. Saves out a Data Wizard template. It's a simple text-based file. You can save that out. And why do we do that? It's easy to load that stuff again and run it from a template. You can distribute that stuff to your end users. They can load that and they can execute these legends really quickly. So let's hit finish. Drop this right in here. And just as we expected, no hatching, of course, but there is a storm manhole. There's coniferous and deciduous trees. And then, of course, that storm sewer pipe showing up. The legend from template. This behaves just as though we ran setup legend. But setup legend, it's going to remember just the last settings, right? So if you're executing different legends, you may not have the right settings. So I can run legend from template. I can browse out, grab that one I just saved. It's going to have all those same settings. Hit OK. And execute that same legend in that way. So that's what you're after here. Set up your layer descriptions, your style descriptions, whatever it might be, so that data means something in your legends or in your tabulations. Data Wizard will read all of it. You just need to have it in your template. Now there's all kinds of objects we can scan for. I thought I'd show you another simple scenario here of creating a legend. And then we'll do a simple quantity takeoff. But it all basically behaves the same way. You've got those first three screens where you choose your source drawings, you choose your object filters, and then you choose what data to extract. And then does it go to Excel or does it go to an AutoCAD table? So what I've got here, these are multi-leaders with blocks inside the multi-leader. So if you're not familiar with those, we can take a look. I've got some multi-leader styles in here. They're named callouts. And then right here in the content, the multi-leader type is a block. The standard one is an M-text, but if you use a block, that's how you can get these little callouts here. And they're also all annotated. So Data Wizard will work with model space, paper space, annotative objects, non-annotative objects, AutoCAD objects, and Civil 3D objects. Okay, how you've drawn your blocks, your styles, all that kind of stuff that plays into it. The table styles themselves, if we take a look at those, these are just native table styles, but the settings you have in here, the margins that we saw around the hatch samples, all of that stuff reads from just the native Civil 3D tables. We'll do some deep dives on that stuff in the future, like I said, in some other webcasts. Do some deeper dives on configuration of Data Wizard. Today I mostly wanted to show you some primary use cases. So here, I've got, we're in model space for one, and I've got a variety of these multi-leader callouts in my drawing here. And I want to simply build a keynote legend. So let's run setup legend. I want to scan the current drawing, hit next, and we want to select multi-leaders. And I want to point out one other thing here. The last time we ran this was in the other drawing, and now we ran this in this drawing. So we've tried to make the memory, so to speak, of Data Wizard as smart as possible. So the previous settings are based on the drawing as well that you're in. because last time we didn't check multi-leaders, but this drawing, it's remembering what we did in here. So it makes it pretty smart in that way. CIM Project Suite installs in your C program data user preference files, and that stuff will remember preferences you set in these tools, and the stuff stays there. If you upgrade to the new version of CIM Project Suite, those preferences stick with it. So try to make it as user-friendly as possible. And hit the refresh button here. It shows I've got 7 items with no filters. Hit the next button here. Multi-leaders. And I've run this before in here. Native table styles, but the custom description. So this stuff will be remembered or saved as well. So when it finds a callout native Civil 3D table name, it'll drop description. But we could put other information in here as well, in some other webcasts. It's embedded inside of our multi-leaders cases. So here I've got, let's turn on additional data of these data, and here it's showing up. It's tag number, and then I've also got the description. So I could have some non-displayed data be tabulated. So let's leave that on. Description checked on. Okay, now let's hit next, and when we do that, this is where we get the full preview of what's going to be in our table, and those attributes show up here. And there is, it looks like in one of my multi-leaders in the blocks, as smart as possible. So you can have this attribute data within your multi-leaders as well. You can have it within your blocks, and you can read not just layer name. It makes it pretty smart. Names, all this kind of information can pull through. So to do that, most of you should be familiar with Block Editor, right? We're just going into our block, and you're adding those preferences stick with it. Say we're in one attribute data in this block. You're just running the attribute definition here. You can make it invisible so it doesn't display, but it's background attribute data that you could tabulate. Okay. So backing out, let's run setup legend again. It's going to remember those settings. Moving along. I don't have layer descriptions that are helpful here, so I'm going to go in and turn off layer description. And the additional data, I only had one attribute on one of these multi-leader styles. Let's turn on additional data. I'm just going to show the graphics and the custom description in here. Go to the next page here. Got the description, legend. So some of these scale factors and the size of those blocks start to play next, and when we do that, this is where we get, but it's all just based on your standards. And what's set in here, again, saves those templates. Let's reset this so you guys see what it looks like. The D looks like in one of my multi-leaders in the blocks. Okay, so I'll set those to 1. The rest of these settings will keep the same. This is what we're going to tabulate the graphic and the custom description. And down here, we're going to spit this out to an AutoCAD table. So I'll drop this over here. And it turns out I get giant symbols with small text. Okay. So however your stuff is drawing, if it's not scaled right annotatively, it could be any number of reasons. You don't have to worry about it that much. You can just adjust these scale factors to work for however that stuff is drawn. So that looked like it was really big. Last time it looked like a 0.02 was working. And then I get a keynote legend. That's a lot more reasonable to work with. Okay. So it all behaves the same way. Multi-leaders, survey points, blocks, 3D polylines, you name it. Tabulate that information, format it how you like. Pretty easy to work with. Let's show you one other thing. We'll do a quick quantity takeoff. back in this existing base file. Maybe I want to quantify some curb. This is existing stuff. Could be proposed feature lines, polylines, you name it. Let's do a simple quantity takeoff. It works much like we just did here, except now we're saying let's scan the whole drawing. We're not after hatches this time. I'm going to refresh and highlight the graphic in the custom description. Perhaps we just want to find the number of catch basins and storm drain manholes in here. So we could go into our filter here and strip this down a little bit and say, just give me layers that have STRM in them. And when I do that, I get 22 objects. I'll hit next there. Let's take a look at that. Finding different catch basins and manholes. Okay, and they have different descriptions. Those are showing up. Let's take a moment. Let's look at the survey figures. I've got 368 showing up. I don't want all my line work. Let's say we just want curb and concrete. And again, those are based on my layer standards. Hit OK, hit next, and we're getting curb and concrete. Now, what kind of information do I want on it? I said I wanted to do a quantity takeoff, so I want things like 2D length, and I want to count up those objects. And that now shows up here. How many of each object type, linear length totals. And next, and this time we're going to go to an Excel spreadsheet. Overwrite that old one. And there's a couple options here that become available when we're doing an Excel spreadsheet. They're not available with an AutoCAD table. With an Excel spreadsheet, and depending on the complexity of your data, if you wanted to basically merge everything to the left so that it ignores the empty columns, for example, you can do this minimize number of columns, or if you do preserve, it's going to keep all these columns in place. And we're just spitting this out to Excel, and we can work with a lot of different ways once it's there. But that's another option as well. Let's hit finish. It's going to say it already exists. I'm going to say overwrite that Excel spreadsheet. It's going to execute that. And then on my other screen it showed up and gave me a count of everything. Now maybe it's not all the information I wanted, right? I think I might have missed raw description and some things there. Maybe I want some headers as well. So let's close out of that. Let's run that one more time. And this time, on that last screen, let's say, give me object types, give me headers, help sort my information, come back to the data to extract here, show me raw description as well. Overwrite that Excel file again. There, giving me more helpful information. Headers, section data, right? Counting up all my curb and gutter, all the concrete, counting up my different storms and catch basins. I didn't do the filter right on there. I will want to lump this stuff together better, but you can see it's counting it up. Everything with a description of CB, so on and so forth, right? So the quantity takeoff's really easy to do with this. Perhaps you want to bring out to Excel and you want to make your tabulations there, bring it back into AutoCAD. Good if you wanted to, but really what Data Wizard will kick out is a table of just about any kind of format you might want to do. So that's a lot of what I wanted to show you guys in Data Wizard. I want to touch on a few more things, just to leave you with some thoughts and then some future information. So Data Wizard, lots of different use cases, but our main mode is going to execute that. And and then on legends and QTOs. When we did this, we partnered with Bolton and Menk on this, and this was a big issue for them as well as it is for many companies. And so we had multiple people on the team here thinking through how this thing should work, and built something that all of you guys, I think, would find a lot of value from. But some of the main benefits: fewer mistakes, right? We're scanning drawings for sort my information, legends or quantity takeoffs. We can create those templates, overwrite that Excel file again. Too much for some of your new end users, right? Provide these templates for them. Makes it quite simple. And you can configure this to whatever your organization standards are. Section data, right? Style names, you name it. You can pull that data from all different types of sources. I do want there. I will want to. Got a couple other object types we've had people request. Really easy to do with there. We're going to have parcel objects in there. We have parcel segments, but we're going to drop parcel objects in there. And then we're going to also add pipe and pressure network parts. Now, out of the gate, we had thought, the Civil 3D tabulation works pretty well for pipe and pressure networks. But then we got it where customers started using this and said, look, I can do just about everything in Data Wizard. Why don't we just add these few more objects? That's what we're going to do in the near future here. We're going to add per item functionality. So what if you wanted to tabulate every single object that showed up and pull out northing and easting or things like this from those objects, station and offset, right? And I want a row for each and every object, not one main benefits: fewer with a count in a quantity takeoff scenario, or one symbol, right? So this really changes how Data Wizard will function. That'll be a setting right at the too much for some of your new end users, right? Do per item functionality. And then all kinds of other usability enhancements to help make it more powerful. I want to mention some future enhancements. Use. Those of you who don't have the CIM Project Suite, how do you get it? It's quite simple. You go to our website, ctcsoftware.com. You go to our products. About everything in Data Wizard. Why don't we just add these in the near future here? Go to trial right here. Trial Data Wizard for a few weeks. Okay. Check out our website as well, our CTC YouTube page. Lots of information there. I thank you guys for attending, and we will see you next time. Take care.